The crystal chamber glowed with soft blue light, same as it had for 300 years. Inside lay Prince Ashran Velshara, perfectly still, perfectly preserved, perfectly useless to anyone. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, but his eyes stayed closed. Every week someone new tried to wake him. Every week they failed. Nora Castellan did not care about any of this. She cared about getting her ship back and going home. The Drethian guards had caught the wandering star 2 days ago, right at the edge of their space. Wrong place, wrong time. And now Nora and her crew of 11 were stuck in a palace that looked like someone had built a castle inside a spaceship. Everything glowed. Everything hummed with power that made her tools go haywire. Magic and technology mixed together in ways that hurt her brain. This way, please. The tall Drethian guide spoke perfect English, which was creepy. His skin had tiny silver scales that caught the light. You are fortunate. We do not often show outsiders our greatest tragedy. Nora followed with the rest of her crew. Ruth walked beside her, eyes wide at all the floating lights and impossible architecture. Derek kept trying to map the place on his tablet, but the halls changed when you were not looking. Dr. Kask just looked tired. They all wanted to go home. The chamber sat deep under the palace. More guards stood at attention, wearing armor that definitely was not just metal. The guide stopped at a massive door covered in symbols that glowed red. 3 centuries ago, our youngest prince was cursed, the guide said, like he was reciting from a book. The finest mages in 17 star systems have tried to wake him. None have succeeded. The curse grows stronger with each attempt. Now we simply keep him comfortable and wait. Wait for what? Nora asked. The guide looked at her with golden eyes. For a miracle that will never come. The doors opened without anyone touching them. Inside, the blue light was brighter. The crystal chamber stood in the center of the room, about the size of a small car, suspended above the floor by nothing Nora could see. Tubes and wires ran from it to machines in the walls. Monitors displayed vital signs in languages she could not read. Inside the crystal, the prince looked young. Maybe 20 in human years, though who knew with dragon people. His hair was black, his skin pale gold. He wore simple clothes, not the fancy stuff the other Drethians had on. He looked peaceful. He looked dead, except for the breathing. Beautiful, is he not? The guide moved closer. Ashran was beloved by all. Kind, curious, always questioning traditions. The assassin chose well. Killing him would have made a martyr. This is worse. This is hope slowly dying year after year. Nora walked around the chamber, ignoring the gasps from the guards. She tapped on the crystal. Solid, thick, probably harder than diamond. She checked the machines. Advanced life support way beyond human tech, but she recognized the basics. Oxygen, nutrients, temperature control. Everything was working perfectly. Too perfectly. You said the curse gets stronger when you try to break it? She asked. Yes, every spell feeds it power. We learned this after 50 years of failures. Nora nodded slowly, thinking. She had seen this before, kind of. On ships, sometimes a safety system would lock down so hard that trying to override it just made it worse. The trick was not to fight it. The trick was to ignore it completely. Has anyone tried just asking him to wake up? The guide stared at her. So did the guards. One of them made a sound that might have been a laugh. Asking? The guide's voice was cold now. You think we have not tried speaking to him? We have sung awakening hymns. We have chanted his true name for days without stopping. We have had his mother weep at his side and beg him to return. Nothing works. Yeah, but did you just ask? Like normally? This is not a game, human. You mock our pain. I am not mocking anything. Nora walked right up to the crystal. The guards tensed. She could feel magic in the air, prickling against her skin like static electricity. The curse, probably. It did not scare her. It was just another system running on rules. Every system could be interrupted. She knocked on the crystal 3 times. Hard, sharp raps like she was knocking on a stuck cargo door. The sound echoed in the chamber. Hey, she said loud and clear. Kid, up, now. For a moment, nothing happened. The guide opened his mouth to say something angry. The guards moved forward to pull her away. Then Ashran's eyes opened. They were green, bright green, and very confused. He blinked once, twice, 3 times. His hand moved, fingers flexing. His mouth opened. What year is it? His voice was rough from 300 years of silence. The chamber exploded into noise. Guards shouting, the guide backing away, alarms starting to blare. The crystal started to crack, thin lines spreading across its surface. Magic burst outward in waves that made Nora's teeth hurt. Ashran sat up slowly, like someone waking from a normal sleep. He looked around at all the chaos, then down at himself, then at Nora standing right in front of him. "Who are you?" he asked. "Nora, you have been asleep a long time." "How long?" 300 years. He processed this quietly while everyone else lost their minds around them. Then he looked at her again, really looked at her. "You woke me. I knocked and told you to get up. Seemed worth a try." The crystal shattered completely, pieces dissolving into light before they hit the ground. Ashran stepped out of the chamber, stumbled, caught himself on a railing that appeared out of nowhere. Magic swirled around him, unstable and bright. "Impossible," the guide whispered. "You have no magic. You did nothing. This is impossible." But Ashran was awake, standing, breathing, looking around at a world that had moved on without him for 3 centuries. And Nora was already thinking about what this meant for getting her crew home, sometimes. The simplest solution worked because everyone else was too busy being complicated. The interrogation room had no windows and too many mages. Nora sat in a chair that was definitely watching her because it adjusted itself every time she moved. Across the table, 5 Drethians in elaborate robes stared at her like she was a bomb that might explode. "Explain again how you broke the curse," the eldest mage said. His scales were deep purple and his eyes glowed faintly. "I did not break anything. I knocked on the glass and told him to wake up." "That is not an explanation. That is what happened." They had been going in circles for 3 hours. The mages kept scanning her with devices that hummed and sparked. They checked her blood, her breath, even the dirt under her fingernails. Looking for magic she did not have. Looking for tricks she did not know. Looking for any explanation that made sense to them. It was giving her a headache. "Perhaps she is possessed," suggested a younger mage with silver markings on her face. An ancient spirit could hide inside a human vessel. "We checked for possession twice," another mage said. "She is clean." "Then she must have technology we cannot detect. We scanned for that too. Nothing." Nora rubbed her eyes. "Can I talk to my crew? Make sure they are okay?" "Your crew is comfortable and safe. Answer our questions." "I have been answering your questions. You just do not like my answers." The purple mage leaned forward. "Prince Ashran has been sleeping for 300 years. Our most powerful sorcerers tried to wake him. The Empress herself performed the ritual of true names. Nothing worked. Then you, a human with no magical ability whatsoever, speak 3 words and he wakes immediately. You must understand our skepticism. I understand you are making this complicated when it is simple." "Nothing about this is simple." Nora sighed. She was tired, hungry, and stuck in a palace that made her nervous. But she was also an engineer, and she hated when people could not see obvious solutions. "Look," she said, "you told me the curse got stronger every time someone tried to break it with magic, right?" "Correct. So every spell you cast at it fed it more power. Made it harder to break?" "Basic feedback loop." The mages looked at each other. The purple one frowned. "That is one theory, yes. So I did not use magic at all? No power for the curse to feed on. I just talked to the prince like a person instead of a magical problem. The curse had nothing to grab onto. That is absurd." "It worked, though." Before the purple mage could respond, the door opened. Everyone stood up fast. Nora stayed sitting because she had no idea who was important and who was not in this place. A woman entered who was definitely important. She wore deep red robes that seemed to be made of liquid light, and her scales were pure gold. Her eyes were the same green as Ashran's. The mages bowed low. "Empress," the purple mage said. "We were just questioning the human." "I heard. I have questions of my own." Empress Kalindra looked at Nora with an expression that was hard to read. "You woke my son?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do you know what that means to me?" "To our people?" Nora thought about it carefully. "I know you have been visiting him for 300 years. I know you probably tried everything you could think of. I know I got lucky." "Luck?" Kalindra's voice was soft. "You think it was luck?" "I think it was trying something nobody else thought to try. Sometimes that is the same thing." The Empress moved closer, studying Nora's face. "My son is weak from his long sleep. His magic is unstable. He remembers falling asleep 3 centuries ago and waking moments later. Everyone he knew is dead or old. His world is gone. But he is alive. He is awake. Because of you. I'm glad I could help. Are you? Or did you simply want to solve an interesting puzzle?" Nora met the Empress's eyes. "Both, maybe. I saw a problem. I thought of a solution. I tried it. That is what I do." Kalindra was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to the mages. "Release her crew. Give them guest quarters. They are not prisoners." "But your Majesty, we have not determined how she broke the curse. She could be dangerous. She is human. They are all dangerous in ways we do not expect. That is precisely why I want to understand them better." The Empress looked back at Nora. "You and your crew will stay in the palace as our guests while my son recovers. We will negotiate your release and your ship's return when Ashran is strong enough to speak for himself." "Why does he need to speak for himself?" "Because he asked to meet you properly. He is very curious about the person who woke him. I'm curious about what you will say to each other." The Empress left as quickly as she came. The mages looked unhappy but started gathering their equipment. Nora was escorted to much nicer rooms where her crew was already waiting. Ruth grabbed her in a hug. "They let us go." "What did you say to them?" "Nothing that helped." The Empress decided we are interesting. "Interesting good or interesting bad?" Derek asked. "Not sure yet." Dr. Kask sat in a chair by the window that showed impossible stars. "The prince wants to see you." "That is good, right?" "He can tell them to let us go." "Maybe, if he remembers how things work here." 300 years is a long time. That evening, a servant came to bring Nora to Ashran's chambers. She followed through hallways that shifted and changed, past guards that watched her carefully, to a door that opened by itself. Inside, the prince sat by a window, looking out at the city below. He wore different clothes now, still simple but cleaner. His hair was combed back. He looked less confused than before, but also sad. "Nora," he said without turning around. "That is your name, yes?" "Yes. Thank you for waking me." She walked over to stand beside him. The city was beautiful and strange, buildings that floated and connected by bridges of solid light. "You are welcome. How are you feeling?" "Lost. Everything is different. My brothers and sisters are grown. My friends are gone. My mother looks at me like I am a ghost." He finally turned to face her. "But I am alive." "That is because of you. I just knocked on the glass." "You did more than that. You saw a problem everyone else had given up on, and you tried the one thing they never considered. That is not luck. That is wisdom." Nora shrugged. "Where I come from, we fix what is broken. We do not spend 300 years staring at it." Ashran laughed quietly. It sounded rusty. "I think I am going to enjoy talking with you. Tell me about humans. Tell me about your world. Tell me anything that is not about this palace and these 300 years I lost." So she did. They talked until late into the night, a dragon prince and a human engineer, finding unexpected friendship in the strangest of circumstances. The door to Nora's quarters would not close properly. It stuck halfway, hummed angrily, then slid back open. She had watched 3 servants and 2 mages spend an hour chanting spells at it with no results. Now they were gone, and the door was still broken. Useless, she muttered, kneeling down to examine the track. Magic made everything glow and hum, but underneath all that, it was still just a door with a motor and a track. She pulled out her multi-tool and started unscrewing the panel. You should not do that. Ashran stood in the doorway, watching. He had been spending a lot of time with her over the past week, asking questions about everything human. Those panels are sealed with protective enchantments. The enchantments are not stopping the door from jamming. Perhaps the door is cursed. The door has a broken servo motor. Nora pulled the panel free. Inside was a mess of crystal circuits and metal components all tangled together. She found the motor, saw the problem immediately. A gear had come loose and jammed against the housing. She pried it back into place, tightened the mount, and replaced the panel. The door closed smoothly. As Ren stared. You fixed it? Yes. The mages said it would take 3 days to properly diagnose the curse and craft a counterspell. It was not cursed. It was broken. Different things. She stood up, wiping oil off her hands. You want to learn something useful? Come with me. She led him to the palace's eastern wing, where a shield generator had failed 2 days ago. Mages were setting up for what they called the ritual of restoration. Candles, crystals, chalk circles on the floor. Very dramatic. Very time-consuming. What are they doing? Ashran asked. Preparing a 3-day ceremony to fix something that probably needs a new power cell, Nora said. She walked past the mages, ignoring their protests, and went straight to the generator. It was the size of a car, covered in glowing symbols and humming with residual energy. Stop, one of the mages said. That device is dangerous. You cannot simply. Nora opened the maintenance panel she had spotted earlier. Inside, exactly as she expected, was a power cell with a loose connection. She pushed it back into place and locked it down. The generator hummed to life, shields flickering back on around the palace section. The mages stared in silence. Sometimes, Nora said to Ashran, the answer is not a spell. Sometimes it is just a loose connection. Over the next few days, Ashran followed her everywhere. When she fixed a water recycler that 5 mages said was possessed by angry spirits, he watched carefully. When she repaired a communication crystal that had gone dark, he asked questions about how she knew where to look. When she got the palace's central environmental controls working again after they had been malfunctioning for years, he started taking notes. You think differently than we do, he said one evening. They sat in his chambers, looking at schematics she had drawn of palace systems. You do not see magic. You see components and connections. Everything has components and connections. Magic just hides them. We are taught that magic is the highest form of problem solving. That understanding spells and rituals is what separates us from lesser species. Nora looked at him. Do I seem lesser to you? No, that is the problem. You solve things we cannot without any magic at all. It makes our mages look foolish. It makes them look specialized. They know magic. I know engineering. Different tools. Not everyone sees it that way. Ashran pointed to the window. Outside, crowds had gathered in the palace square. They were chanting something. They are calling for you. The common people, the ones with no magic. They see you as proof that they matter too. I am just trying to fix things. You are changing things? Every time you repair something our mages could not, you prove that magical power is not the only kind of power. That scares people who have built their entire lives around being magically superior? Nora thought about that. She had noticed the mages watching her more carefully lately, whispering when she walked past. The Empress had summoned her twice to ask strange questions about human society and human methods. Something was building here, and she was at the center of it. I should probably stop fixing things, she said. No, Ashran's voice was firm. You should teach me. Teach others. If I'm going to rule someday, I need to understand both magic and method. I need to know that there is more than one way to solve a problem. So she taught him how to ask why instead of casting a spell, how to trace problems to their source, how to test solutions without assuming magic would handle everything. He learned quickly, and he was not the only one. Ruth started teaching palace engineers about basic mechanical systems. Derek showed the navigation mages how to cross-reference star charts. Even Dr. Kask found himself explaining human medicine to Drethian, healers who had relied on healing spells for everything. The crew was making friends, building bridges, changing minds, but not everyone was happy about it. Late one night, Nora woke to alarms. She ran into the hallway and found guards everywhere, weapons drawn. Ashran was there too, looking angry and scared. "What happened?" she asked. "Lord Tarvik, the High Mage, he tried to seal my chambers with a binding spell. If palace security had not caught it, I would have been trapped." Ashran looked at her. "Someone does not want me awake. Someone who has been in power a very long time." Nora's mind started working through the implications. A curse that kept the prince asleep for 300 years. A mage who gained power during that time. A sudden awakening that threatened everything he had built. "We need to find out who cursed you in the first place," she said. "I bet it was not an assassin at all." Ashran met her eyes and nodded slowly. "I think you are right. And I think we just made him very nervous." The game had changed. Now they had to prove it before whoever cursed Ashran tried to finish what they started 3 centuries ago. The archive room smelled like old paper and ozone. Nora sneezed for the 3rd time as Ashran pulled another massive book from the shelf. They had been searching for 2 days, looking through records from 300 years ago, trying to find anything about the original curse. "This is impossible," Ruth said from across the room. She was sorting through digital files that the Drethians kept on crystal drives. "There are thousands of reports from the day you were cursed. Everyone had a theory. Nobody agreed on anything." "Keep looking," Ashran said. His eyes were tired. He had barely slept since the attempt on his chambers. "There has to be something. Some detail everyone missed." Nora was examining the medical reports from when Ashran first fell asleep. The descriptions were detailed but useless. The curse appeared suddenly during a state dinner. No warning, no obvious attack. The prince simply stopped mid-sentence and collapsed. By the time healers arrived, he was already locked in magical sleep. "Who was at the dinner?" she asked Dot as Ren pulled up the guest list. 47 nobles, 12 mages, 5 ambassadors, and the royal family. All of them were questioned extensively. Nobody saw anything suspicious. "What about the mages? Who were they?" He read the names aloud. Most meant nothing to Nora, but one stood out. "Tarvik." "He was there?" "Yes, he was young then, barely qualified as a mage. He helped with the initial diagnosis." Ashran paused. "He has been involved in every attempt to wake me since. Every ritual, every spell, every theory. He was always there." "Feeding the curse," Nora said quietly. "Keeping you asleep while he took power?" Derek burst into the room, breathing hard. "We found something." Dr. Kask was examining the old curse analysis reports. And he noticed something weird about the energy signatures. They followed him to the medical wing, where Dr. Kask had set up equipment borrowed from palace healers. On a screen, he showed them energy patterns recorded during various attempts to wake Ashran. "Look at this," the doctor said, pointing to peaks and valleys in the data. "Every time they tried a new spell, the curse absorbed the energy. But look at where the energy went." Nora studied the patterns. They did not disperse randomly. They flowed in a specific direction, like water draining into a pipe. "Someone was siphoning it off?" she said. "Taking the power for themselves." "Exactly. And I found transfer records buried in the old files. Small amounts, easy to miss, but consistent. All going to one recipient over 300 years. "Tarvik," Ashran said. His voice was cold. Dr. Kask nodded. "His magical power readings have increased steadily over the centuries. Everyone assumed it was natural talent and hard work. But the timing matches perfectly with energy drawn from your curse. He has been feeding on me for 300 years. Ashran's hands clenched into fists. "Growing stronger while I slept. That is why he tried to seal my chambers." I am awake now. The energy flow stopped. He is losing his power source. We need to tell the Empress, Ruth said. We need proof first, Nora countered. Right now we have suspicious data and theories. Tarvik is the High Mage. He has authority and respect. We are humans and a prince who just woke up. We need something concrete. Then we get proof, Ashran said. Tonight. Breaking into the High Mage's private chambers was easier than Nora expected. Palace security was designed to stop magical threats, not a human engineer with lockpicks and a basic understanding of circuits. Ruth disabled the alarm crystals while Derek kept watch. Dr. Kask stayed back at their quarters, ready to provide alibi if needed. Inside Tarvik's rooms, everything was organized and pristine. Books arranged by height, artifacts displayed in perfect rows, not a speck of dust anywhere. It was the room of someone with too much control and too much time. What are we looking for? Ruth whispered. Anything that connects him to the curse, Ashran said. He was searching through drawers, careful not to disturb the precise arrangement. Nora went straight to the desk. It was locked, but she had opened more complicated things. Inside she found journals. Lots of them. She opened one at random and started reading. Her blood went cold. Found it, she said quietly. The others gathered around. The journal was old, the writing young and ambitious. Tarvik had documented everything. The plan to curse the prince. The spell components. The gradual siphoning of power over decades. His rise through the ranks of palace mages. His growing influence and strength. He had even written about his doubts early on. Whether it was worth it. Whether he should end the curse and face justice. Then the doubts stopped. The entries became colder, more calculating. The curse was not just feeding him power anymore. It was changing him. Making him believe he deserved everything he had stolen. This is all the proof we need, Derek said, taking pictures of the pages with his tablet. A slow clap echoed through the chamber. They all spun around. Tarvik stood in the doorway, smiling. His eyes glowed with unnatural light, power radiating from him in waves that made the air shimmer. I wondered when you would figure it out, he said calmly. Honestly, I expected it sooner. You are quite clever for primitives. Ashran stepped forward, magic gathering around his hands. You cursed me. You stole 300 years of my life. I borrowed your power. You were not using it. Asleep, you were useless. Awake, you were a threat to progress. I made myself into the greatest mage in the Empire using what you wasted. Tarvik's smile faded. And now you have ruined everything. That human woke you with her barbaric methods, and my power source disappeared. Do you know how that feels? Having strength beyond measure, then losing it bit by bit? You are still the High Mage, Nora said. You still have authority. Authority is nothing without power. And you have been teaching everyone that power comes from more than magic. You are dangerous. All of you. He raised his hands. The doors slammed shut. The windows sealed. Magic filled the room, thick and choking. I cannot let you leave this room. I cannot let you reveal what you know. So I will do what I should have done 3 centuries ago. His power exploded outward, and Nora realized they were in serious trouble. Tarvik's first spell hit like a hammer. Ashran threw up a shield, but it cracked under the assault. The High Mage had 300 years of stolen power, and he was not holding back. Run! Ashran shouted. Get out of here! The doors are sealed, Nora shouted back. She was already pulling Ruth and Derek toward cover behind a heavy bookshelf. Magic exploded around them, burning the air, making it hard to breathe. Then I will unseal them, Derek said. He had his tablet out, scanning the door mechanisms. The locks are partly mechanical. I just need time. Time is something we do not have, Ruth pointed out as another spell blasted chunks out of the wall above their heads. Nora's mind raced. Tarvik was too powerful for Ashran to fight directly. 3 centuries of siphoned energy made him nearly unstoppable with magic. But magic was not the only way to fight. She yelled. Stop trying to match him spell for spell. Fight dirty, The prince looked at her, confused for just a moment. Then understanding dawned. He stopped casting defensive barriers and instead grabbed a heavy statue, hurling it at Tarvik with enhanced strength. The High Mage deflected it easily, but he had to break his concentration to do it. That was all Nora needed. She ran from cover, staying low, moving fast. Her multi-tool was in her hand. The room was full of magical artifacts on display, all of them sources of power. If she could disrupt them, maybe it would throw Tarvik off balance. The first artifact was a crystal that glowed with contained lightning. She jammed her multi-tool into its base and twisted hard. Something inside cracked. The crystal exploded in a shower of sparks that made Tarvik stumble. "You cannot win this way," he snarled, sending a wave of force that knocked her back. "I am beyond your primitive tricks." Ruth was already moving to the next artifact, a floating orb that hummed with power. She yanked it from its stand and threw it at the High Mage. He caught it with magic, sneering, then screamed as Derek activated a pulse from his tablet that overloaded the orb's containment. It burst like a flashbang, blinding and loud. They were not winning. They were just making him angry. But they were buying time. Derek got the door open. Palace alarms started blaring. Guards would come, but would they side with the High Mage or believe a group of humans and a recently awakened prince? "We need to get to the Empress," Ashwin said, blocking another spell. His magic was weakening. 300 years of sleep had left him nowhere near full strength. "She is the only one who can stop this." "He will kill us before we get there," Ruth said. Nora looked around frantically. The room was a mess of destroyed artifacts and scorch marks. Tarvik stood in the center, breathing hard but still radiating terrible power. He was toying with them now, drawing it out, enjoying their fear. Then she saw it. The ventilation shaft in the ceiling. Palace environmental systems, the ones she had spent days mapping and fixing. She knew every duct, every connection, every pathway. "I have an idea," she said. "But you are not going to like it." 5 minutes later, they were crawling through ducts that were definitely not designed for people. Behind them, they could hear Tarvik tearing the palace apart looking for them. Ahead, the duct led to the central power core, the heart of the palace's combined magical and technological systems. "This is insane," Ruth panted. "We are heading toward the most dangerous place in the palace." "Exactly where he will not expect us to go," Nora said. She had the schematics memorized now. The power core was protected by layers of security and fail-safes. It was also the source of energy for every system in the palace, including the ones Tarvik was using to hunt them. They dropped into the core chamber through a maintenance hatch. The space was massive, filled with humming machinery and glowing crystals the size of buildings. Energy crackled between conduits. The air tasted like metal and ozone. "Now what?" Derek asked. "Now we cause a very controlled disaster," Nora said. She pointed to a series of support columns that held up the magical containment fields. "If we take out those supports, the containment destabilizes. The power does not explode outward. It implodes, pulling everything nearby into a collapse, including Tarvik if we can lure him here," Ashren said slowly. "But also including us. Not if we time it right. We break the supports, get out through that emergency exit," she pointed to a marked door, "and let the collapse catch him when he follows us in." "How do we break supports designed to hold back that much energy?" Ruth asked as Ren smiled grimly. "Dragonfire? My magic might be weak, but my other form is still strong enough." They set it up quickly. Derek rigged proximity sensors to alert them when Tarvik approached. Ruth found emergency breathing masks in case the atmosphere went bad. Nora calculated exactly which supports to destroy and in what order, then they made noise. Lots of it. Smashing equipment, triggering alarms, making sure Tarvik knew exactly where they were. He came fast, bursting through the main doors with magic blazing around him like a storm. His eyes were wild now, beyond reason, beyond mercy. 300 years of stolen power had twisted him into something barely sane. "You cannot hide from me," he screamed. "I will burn this entire palace down if I have to." "Now!" Nora shouted as Ren changed. His human form rippled and expanded into something massive and scaled and ancient. Dragon form, weakened but still powerful. He breathed fire at the support columns Nora had marked. Metal melted. Crystal cracked. The containment field started to collapse. Tarvik realized too late what they had done. He tried to run, but the energy implosion was already forming, a swirling vortex of power with him at the center. His stolen magic, his 3 centuries of accumulated strength, all of it was being pulled back into the core that had powered the palace for generations. He screamed, trying to release the power, trying to escape, but he had held onto it too long, taken too much. It was part of him now, and it was tearing him apart from the inside. Nora, Ruth, Derek, and Ashren ran for the emergency exit as the core chamber collapsed behind them. The palace gardens were quiet in the morning light. 3 weeks had passed since the core collapse. Repairs were ongoing, but the structure had held. Tarvik was gone, consumed by his own stolen power. The investigation had uncovered everything, exposing decades of conspiracy and corruption in the Mage Council. Nora sat on a bench, watching palace workers combine human engineering techniques with Drathian magic to fix a fountain. They worked together easily now, sharing methods, learning from each other. It was strange how fast things could change when people stopped assuming there was only one right way to do things. "There you are," Ashren said, walking up with 2 cups of something hot. He had recovered well from the fight. His magic was still weaker than it should be, but he did not seem to mind. He had been spending more time learning engineering than practicing spells lately. "Thanks." Nora took the cup. It was some kind of Drathian tea that tasted like flowers and electricity. She was getting used to it. "The Empress wants to see you," Ashren said. "Final meeting before you leave. About that." Nora set down her cup. "She offered me a job. Teaching at the Palace Engineering Academy. Helping set up exchange programs with human colonies." "I know," she told me. "What did you say?" "I said I would think about it. That means yes for you." Ashren smiled. "You like fixing things too much to leave when everything is still broken. The palace is not broken anymore." "I meant the Empire. We spent 300 years solving every problem with magic. Now we are learning there are other ways. Better ways sometimes. That takes more than 3 weeks to fix." Nora looked at him. "What about you?" "They offered you your old position back. Prince, heir, all the titles. I turned it down." He said it calmly, like it was an easy decision. "I do not fit here anymore. 300 years changed everything. My siblings have their own lives. The Empire has moved on. I could take a ceremonial position, stand around looking princely, but that is not living. So what will you do?" "I am going with your crew. To human space." He held up a hand before she could object. The Empress approved it. "First Drathian ambassador to Earth and her colonies. I get to learn everything about your people, your methods, your way of thinking, and maybe teach a little about ours too. Derek is going to love having a dragon prince on the ship. Ruth already made me promise to help in the engine room. Apparently my fire breath is useful for welding." He laughed. "I never thought I would use my dragon form to fix spaceships." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Around them, the palace hummed with activity. Drathians and humans working together, building something new from the pieces of old traditions and fresh ideas. "You changed everything, you know," Ashren said quietly. "You knocked on a glass case and told a sleeping prince to wake up, but you woke up more than just me. You woke up an entire empire to the idea that there are other ways to be strong. I just fixed what was broken. That is what I mean. You saw a person where everyone else saw a magical problem. You saw solutions where everyone else saw impossibilities. You looked at 300 years of failure and thought, maybe they are all overthinking this. Sometimes the simple answer is the right one. And sometimes the right answer is not an answer at all. It is a question. Why are we doing it this way? Is there a better way? What would happen if we tried something new?" Ashren stood up, offering his hand to help her up. "You taught me to ask those questions. Now I'll learn everything else." The meeting with the Empress was formal but warm. Kalindra had changed too, softened by watching her son laugh again. By seeing her empire adapt and grow instead of just maintaining old traditions, you saved my son twice, she said to Nora. Once from his curse and once from the man who created it. We are in your debt. You're giving my crew their ship back and safe passage home. We are even. Hardly. But I will not argue. Kalindra smiled slightly. I hear you are considering staying, teaching. For a while. There's a lot of work to do. Indeed. And Ashran tells me he is going with you to human space. I should forbid it. A prince leaving the empire, abandoning his duties. But I think he is right. The best way for our peoples to understand each other is to live together, learn together, build together. He will be fine. Derek will make him work for his passage. Good, he needs to work. He has been asleep long enough. The wandering star left 3 days later. Nora stood on the dock, watching her crew load supplies. Ruth and Derek were arguing about cargo distribution. Dr. Kask was doing final medical checks. Ashran stood with them, wearing simple human clothes instead of royal robes, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. Ready? She asked. No, he said honestly. But I do not think that matters. The best adventures start when you are not ready. Who told you that? You did. 3 weeks ago, right before we broke into a High Mage's chambers and started a chain of events that changed an empire. I did not say that. You were thinking it loudly. They boarded together. Human engineer and dragon prince, heading out into a galaxy that was bigger and stranger and more connected than either of their peoples had realized. Behind them, the Drathian Empire continued its slow awakening. Learning that strength came in many forms and wisdom meant knowing when to try a different approach. Sometimes the most powerful magic was not a spell at all. Sometimes it was just the courage to knock on a door everyone said would never open, and speak plainly to the person on the other side. Sometimes waking up meant more than opening your eyes. It meant opening your mind to possibilities nobody had considered before, and sometimes the simplest words changed everything. Up. Now, the ship's engines hummed to life, and they flew toward tomorrow.